taking my daughter out the house is like one thing I hate doing. Like, I would sit in the house all week if I had her. Like, I've been feeling like a bad parent because I don't take her places, but she is so bad that it irritates me. I'm in a beauty supply store trying to get some shit for her. Everything in the bag is damn near hers. I turn around at the register for 5 seconds to try to pay for my stuff. This mother pours acrylic nail stuff all over the floor. So I stop, I turn around. She get to running, just spilling it everywhere. I'm like, Isla, stop. I'm not playing. I'm trying to be nice to you. This is literally running around their whole floor. I had to chase it, and she done poured it everywhere on their floor. Like, that is self-embarrassing. I don't want to take her nowhere until she's 10 years old. Shut up.
Whew. Listen, I understand overwhelming can be a difficult thing to process. When you are overwhelmed, sometimes you vent and you're just trying to blow steam to help regulate yourself, to help cope. But if you happen to be venting in relationship with being a parent, there is a healthy way to go about that and an unhealthy way to go about that. And this is an example of an unhealthy way to go about expressing your frustrations and being overwhelmed. Now, typically when we talk about situations such as this, women and mothers alike get triggered because they believe a conversation such as this means that someone is a bad parent. I don't come from that place, nor do I make those accusations or assertions. It's my perspective that when you see behavior that does not have a positive outcome, it is the result of someone who doesn't know any better, or somebody that is that overwhelmed to where they're resulting to a behavior that has been instilled in them from childhood. Both of those situations can be fixed or remedied if that person is willing to acknowledge that it does not yield a positive outcome. This is not a discussion about good versus bad parenting. This is about yielding a positive outcome, not just for your child, but for yourself. And nothing about this discussion says that mom isn't overwhelmed, isn't stressed, isn't unaware of how to get a hold of the situation to make the experience better for the both of them. So her recourse is her coping mechanisms: to vent, to be upset, to be angry, to lash out with her words. And even though that might be something that might have been demonstrated in her childhood, might have been demonstrated in her everyday environment, it must be discussed how this reflects on her as a person and as a parent, and how it impacts the child for her development in the future. Now, even though she's greatly frustrated and overwhelmed, from the outside looking in, people will judge because the empathy is going to go to the child. It's not going to go to the parent, because society as a collective agrees that the adult should have the know-how. The adult should have the understanding. The adult should be able to regulate themselves. The adult should have more common sense, more knowledge, more intelligence, more patience compared to that of the child. So it is expected for the child to be unregulated. In this situation, she's upset because she went to the beauty supply and her daughter opened a bottle of acrylic and spilled it all over the floor. And in her mind, this was embarrassing. The first thing that I will put out there just for common knowledge and for consumption of others is that adolescents don't do things like that deliberately to embarrass their parent. When you're that young, you are experiencing, and every day you're operating in the unknown. So everything that is done is for the collection of data and knowledge, for the sake of inquiry and curiosity. And if your parent does not solve that curiosity without you having to do it yourself, you will touch, you will open, you will taste, you will shake, you will throw, you will do whatever you can to figure out what it is you're looking at and what it's for. And that's where the parenting comes into play. That's where parents say, this is for touching, this is for tasting, this is not for throwing, this is not for jumping, this is where you play, this is not where you play, this is why. So children can then understand what they're looking at in the world they're being introduced to and learn how to operate in that world within the standard that we have come into a collective agreement about how these things are supposed to be navigated. But if you have a parent that is unable to do that, they just live in an expectation of you should know better. The child is operating unregulated. The child is operating without boundaries. The child is operating within an experience where they have to discover these things for themselves. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that this is mommy's fault, because children are created by two people. However, even though mommy may not be the initiator of demonstrating the behavior, she's still responsible for either demonstrating an alternative behavior or correcting the inappropriate behavior. And that is driven home with consistency. So you have to be consistent. Even if a child later understands that you can do this at daddy's house, but not at mommy's house, then that's just what the child needs to understand. But if you get overwhelmed and adopt a state of my child is bad, I can't take them nowhere and I don't want to take them nowhere, understand that you are now telling your brain and every cell within your body that when you associate your daughter with outside, it is going to be a negative experience, which means before you even close the door behind you, you are already programming your entire body to prepare your attitude for your child's bad behavior. And your child is connected to you through a bond. They can feel you, honey. So understand that even before they cause a disturbance, they can feel the disturbance within you. And if you are not regulated, your child would not be regulated. A lot of what we do as parents to regulate our children is by regulating ourselves, because our child comes through us. They have a genetic bond with you. So even when you don't speak upset, you don't act upset, you don't handle them upset, if you're storing upset and stress within your body, your child can feel you. And because they are still learning how to navigate the world, they are still learning how to develop emotional intelligence. Typically, their manifestation of imbalance emotionally manifests in acting out. So it's very possible that you yourself was already stressed because in your mind you have a baby that doesn't act right and embarrasses you in public. So you're already tense. You're already irritated. You're already trying to hurry up and get in and out of this beauty supply store. And then she opens something and spills it. And in your mind, this is deliberate. But outside of her and a manifestation of her behavior, that could have manifested as a result of her feeling your upset and it manifesting within her and her not being able to say, this don't feel right within my body. Children act out when they're experiencing emotions that they don't know how to explain or regulate. And instead of us as parents teaching our children how to regulate those emotions. Typically, your average parent will misunderstand those behaviors and judge them for the behavior. And that is unhealthy, because you have to understand that you're dealing with a being that is experiencing life every step and every experience. So if you haven't expressed to them how to navigate, what to feel, how to express, everything is chaos, and it manifests itself as chaos. So even though you may be venting and saying this child is bad and doesn't know how to act, understand that that behavior, if it's not a manifestation of your demonstration in itself, it's a manifestation of what's going on inside of you, because it's interpreted within your child. Your baby is your mirror. When you don't understand that your baby is your mirror, you will react to them as if their behavior is independent of you when it's including you. And the best way to communicate with your child is to be genuine, to be transparent, and to also remember that they are collecting knowledge with every experience that they share with the environment around them. The concept of embarrassing their parent, disliking their parent, hating their parent, trying to be disrespectful, trying to embarrass you is not even a concept in the mind of the adolescent. They are acting out because they feel something inside that they don't know what to do with, and they don't know how to put words to the emotion, so it comes out as expression. And that's the same way that adults do. Adults that have not been conditioned to put words to their behaviors tend to act out, even if it's not in a destructive way, like opening bottles and spilling it everywhere. An adult will cuss you out. An adult will yell and scream. An adult will flail about and throw their hands everywhere because they are overwhelmed within their own body. And we have to understand that the difference between the adult and the child is the child doesn't understand what's happening to them. They don't know what to do. And don't get me wrong, the adult does not either, typically. But they have seen more demonstrations and had more experiences with emotion to know better, to have experiences with better. This child is just entering into the world. Every experience and every emotion in most cases is a new feeling for the first time. The adult that you're dealing with has adopted acceptance with how they act in relationship with their emotions, and they've typically been doing this same expression since they were an adolescent. This adolescent is dealing with things that are new, and at this point in time is the time to regulate how they give their emotions a voice and how they give themselves permission to behave as a result of what's uncomfortable. As a parent, your job is to demonstrate how to behave when you're frustrated. And you have to understand that in this clip right here, what you're demonstrating is, when I'm frustrated and overwhelmed, I talk badly. When I'm frustrated and overwhelmed, I snap at the person of my, that's the source of that overwhelm. Understand that if that's what you are teaching, if that's what you are demonstrating, you will see a reflection in your child. Example, I'm frustrated, so I'm going to open this bottle and throw it around. You see what I'm saying? And again, this is not about blame. This is not about fault. This is about understanding how the world works and how demonstrations manifest in your child. Understanding what you're looking at in the development of your child. Understanding yourself and being self-aware, and knowing that when you are impatient, when you feel like you're being attacked, you have an unhealthy way of dealing with those emotions. And because you have an unhealthy way of dealing with those emotions, you demonstrate an unhealthy way of dealing with those emotions. Therefore, you can create, and likely will create, a child that is unhealthy with dealing with their emotions as well. So instead of labeling it, my child is bad, labeling it that this is an embarrassing experience, you have to Understand that what you see is a reflection of your display, and say, I don't want to see that behavior anymore. As a result, I have to change how I deal with my overwhelm. I have to change how I deal with my stress and my frustration. I have to change how I speak and how I put words to my emotions, because if I can't do it, I can't teach her how to do it. What I'm going to teach her how to do is act out. What I'm going to teach her how to do is how to be destructive when she's emotionally imbalanced. Because understand, whether you know it or not, being on the internet and having this discussion, using M and F and SHIT and all the rest of that online in conversation about your child is lashing out. It's acting out, just an adult version. And people today call it venting. And women today will say, don't shame her, don't judge her for her emotions, but ignore the fact that you're watching judgment of the child's emotions, judgment of the child's behavior. And the difference between mommy and the child is that the child doesn't understand. The child doesn't know. The child has no idea what's being created in this moment. All they know is they feel uncomfortable. Mommy, however, is the adult of the two, is the person that should have the know-how, should have the awareness, should have the understanding, should be equipped with being able to handle an adolescent. And this is not, again, about insulting and fault and blame. This is about understanding where you are in relationship to where your child is and how you guys coexist. And if this is how you deal with your overwhelm, if this is how you deal with your stress, if this is how you deal with too much being on your plate, there are things that need to be done. And those things look like learning some stress management skills, learning some coping mechanisms, learning how to express and give your emotions a voice with healthy verbiage and affirmation, and not destructive words, and de-escalating a situation instead of heightening a situation. Because understand, even throughout this entire clip, you are verbally being destructive, not only within your own world, but to your child as well. And she's in the back seat crying. When a child cries, that is an initiation of fight or flight mode. It's an initiation of distress. It's a plea for connection with mommy in most cases. So while you're venting and expressing your pain, your child is in the back seat doing the same. Neither one of you guys are being consoled. Neither one of you guys are being heard, but you're expressing yourself to the world and she's expressing herself to you, and nobody's getting their needs met. So can you see the reflection? Can you see the reflection that she is just as upset as you? She just doesn't have the words to describe how she feels. All she can do is holler and say, I don't want it. And mommy has to be the one to take the deep breath and woosah. Mom has to be the one to regulate herself and figure out what's needed and understand, I have to get myself together so my baby can get herself together, so we can be together. This is not for the umpteenth time. This is not about judging mommy, because states of overwhelm occur in every relationship dynamic, even romantic relationship dynamic, and we do that there as well. But in this way, in this context, it's a lot easier to see how you are affecting another person as opposed to when you're dealing with another adult. And for some reason, in both situations, it's very hard to take accountability for how your energy affects the people around you. And I would hope that as a parent, that it would be easier to understand how important it is to regulate yourself so you can give your child a well-balanced and healthy environment. Yes, children are challenging. Yes, they can be overwhelming. Yes, it is difficult at times. But even in those difficulty and challenges, you are supposed to keep a level head, because in all of those moments, you are being watched by somebody who is learning how to do it. And if you have not gotten to a place to where you're proficient at how to do it, take responsibility for the fact that you may not know how to do it at this point in time in your life. As a result of not knowing how to do it, that means you cannot demonstrate it, which means you cannot teach it. Your words have no value if your actions do not follow. We say this all the time. Actions speak louder than words, which means you cannot discipline a child for not acting right if you cannot demonstrate what it looks like to act right. If you are telling them to act right, but you're demonstrating how to act wrong, they will typically act wrong. And then classifying that as bad behavior is being hypocritical. And now you're judging your child for displaying the same behavior that you are guilty of yourself. And it's difficult to teach from that standpoint. It's difficult to parent from that standpoint. So understand yourself so you can understand your child. Peace.